My name is Rabbi Manning. Some of us met yesterday on Shabbat for lunch. I'm originally from England. I lived for many years in London. I was a corporate lawyer there. I was a real estate lawyer, although English lawyers are nice and friendly and cuddly. They're not the American type, lawyers. So I was a lawyer there for many years. And then about 12 years ago, we came to Yerushalayim, my wife and family and I gave up the law. I had enough of that. And I used to give a few shurim here and there, but I wanted to focus on it much more. So Baruch Hashem, for the last 12 years, I've been learning and teaching in different places in Yerushalayim, including here at Chappelle's. And what I wanted to deal with you here is I wanted to show you the development of a topic which is very applicable on a daily basis, which is the kind of thing I used to come across as a lawyer from time to time, and also shows you the development of how the Jewish basis, if you like, of the halachic system, working from the verses through to the analysis in the Mishnah, in the Gemara, and the later commentaries, how that fits together and how that works. This is a little microcosm of an example. You could pick many other types of examples, but this is one I think which you like, which you'll enjoy, which is applicable in many ways, and which demonstrates very well not just the methodology, but also something in life which I think is very useful to know. I call it Trick or Cheat. My wife thought of the title. She's in marketing. I thought that was a rather good title. Difficult dilemmas in life and business. And really it deals with the issue in halacha of geneivat dat. Please feel free, by the way, to jump in at any time and answer questions, or ask me questions. Geneivat dat. What does geneva mean? It means to steal. Geneivat dat means to steal somebody's knowledge. Now what does that mean? It's nothing to do with copyright. Copyright's a whole different issue, and patents and things like that. Any lawyers here? I know Adam's a lawyer. David, you're a lawyer? Okay, what's your area?
Real estate and immigration.
Okay, real estate and immigration. What are you in, Adam?
Trusts and estates.
Trusts and estates. What are the rest of you professionally? And Josh, I know. Ash, what are you?
Programmer.
Computer programmer. Andre, what are you?
Consulting for business.
Business consultants.
High school technology teacher.
High school technology teachers. So there's a lot of professional people sitting around the table, and genevas das, you'll see in your own fields, you'll see how it fits into different areas. Let's have a look at the verse. What you have in front of you is a sheet, double-sided. You have a Hebrew text, you have an English translation underneath each one. Let's go through them and see if we can make some sense of this. We don't have a long share, we only have 40 minutes, so let's make the best of what we've got. The verse in the Torah that deals with theft says the following: Loi tignoivu, do not steal. Loi tignoivu, v'loi techachashu v'loi teshakru, ish ba'amitai. And don't lie, and don't deny claims, each one to their fellow man. There is another verse in the Torah that says don't steal, which is the Ten Commandments, exactly.
Don't kidnap in Russian.
Ah, good. So very good. So the oral Torah comes along and explains that the context of the mitzvah of not to steal in the Ten Commandments are all mitzvot, are all commandments which carry capital offense. And therefore, not stealing, generally in terms of money, doesn't carry a capital offense. What is the penalty in halacha for stealing money? Is you pay back. There's no death penalty for stealing, but kidnapping a person, there is. And therefore, the Loi Tignoiv in the Ten Commandments is talking about kidnapping. This is talking about the standard stealing money. So obviously, stealing includes money. There are different kinds of stealing. There's geneva, which is more deceptive, and there's a gazela, which is more brazen and open. But it's not just about money. You can also steal other things which are a little bit less tangible. Have a look, for example, at number 2. This is to do with Yaakov. Remember Jacob, the whole story there? So he's living with Lavan, his father-in-law, and his father-in-law has cheated him time after time after time, married the wrong wife, and he's with the business, the whole thing. And eventually he runs away. He runs back to Israel. So he says in number 2 like this: V'yignoiv Yaakov es leiv Lavan. So Yaakov stole Lavan's leiv. Now, Where is your lave? What is a lave? It's a heart. But in the Tanakh, lave doesn't mean heart. The lave really means the mind. It's very clear. It's the most essential part of the person. Yaakov stole Lavan's lave. He stole his mind. He cheated him. He tricked him. Because he didn't tell him that he was leaving. So that he was running away. So you can see here, it's interesting that stealing, geneivat, is not just used in the context of stealing money, but is also used in the case of misleading somebody. He didn't tell Lavan he was running away. On that level, he somehow stole, quotes and quotes, his mind, his heart. We see this later with Avshalom. I didn't give the whole thing. David's son, Avshalom, who was pretending to be upstanding and a judge, etc., etc. But really, the whole time it says he was misleading the people. He was stealing their minds by pretending to be someone that he wasn't. And when the rabbis take this idea of stealing someone's mind or heart, they call it not geneivat leiv, but geneivat dat. And we'll see how that's coming up right now. Have a look at number 3. The Mechilta, which is a commentary on the book of Shemot of the rabbis, is very old, about a couple of thousand years old, says like this. Shiv'a gnavim heim. There are 7 types of theft. Harishon sheb'gnavim. The first, the worst, the most, the first in the line, in the pecking order of types of thief, is goinev das habrias, is somebody who steals other people's das. Here we see the word das. Literally, what does the word dat mean in Hebrew? Do you know? Knowledge. Literally, if you steal someone's knowledge. And he gives an example, which is a strange example. You invite someone to come for dinner, but you don't really have any intention of inviting them. Meaning, you're putting yourself across as being very, very hospitable. Oh, you must come around, you must come for dinner, we'd love to have you, etc. But somehow or other, you never end up getting there. Because, it's not convenient this week, and I will try it another time. It's always another time. And the reason you're doing it is you want to look hospitable, but you're not hospitable. Now, would you put this as being like the worst kind of thief? Of all the kind of theft you can do, this is the worst kind of theft. We'll build up a picture of the kinds of examples that come in here as to exactly why the rabbis felt and the Torah feels that this is such a serious kind of theft, that you're stealing other people's understanding. And the area of the Gemara that deals with this is the following question. Are you allowed to sell non-kosher food to non-Jewish people?
Yes, but you can't mix dairy and meat.
Mixing dairy and meat's a problem because there's a prohibition of getting any benefit from dairy and meat. But generally speaking, if you have, let's say, pork or whatever, ham, shrimps, whatever, are you allowed to sell that to non-Jewish people? Yes or no? Yeah, why not? They don't have to eat kosher. There's no problem. There's no problem getting benefit from non-kosher food. Maybe you shouldn't have a pig farm. There are other issues of having, dealing in pigs. But if you end up with some non-kosher food, for sure you can sell it to a non-Jewish friend. Comes along the Gemara, the Mishnah, the oral law from around 2,000 years ago, and says the following. Look at number 4. You can send the leg of a meat, the leg of a cow, to a non-Jewish person. Shegid hanasha betocha, even if the gid hanasha, now the gid hanasha is the sciatic nerve, and if you know, but the sciatic nerve, the nerve that runs through the back of the hind legs of the kosher animal, the gid hanasha is not kosher. They have to remove that before the meat is served. It's a very tricky business. In English, it's called porging. In the Hebrew, it's nikur. You may not even realize all this is done for your meat before it even hits the butcher. In some countries, they don't do it at all. They just take the entire hind part of the animal, they just sell it off to non-Jewish people, and they say, look, we're not even going to get into it. In some countries, they do go through the process of removing the sciatic nerve so you can eat the steak. That's why in some countries, you can't get a good rump steak, because they just don't do kosher rump steak. That's because they don't bother messing around with the sciatic nerve. But you're allowed to send a piece of meat to your non-Jewish friend as long as it has that nerve still in it. Mipnei, because it's obvious to him that it's there. In other words, he'll know that it's not kosher. Comes along the Gemara and says in number 5, the Gemara is the commentary on the Mishnah. Okay, the Gemara comes along and explains and gives context to an explanation to the Mishnah. Shalema in, if it's a leg which is complete and he can see the sciatic nerve, then you can sell it to them. Chatucha, but if it's chopped up, loy. If the guy can't tell that it's not kosher, even though he's not Jewish, if it's all chopped up and minced or whatever, you can't sell it to him.
What difference does it make?
What difference does it make? Why does he care? He's not Jewish, he can eat it either way. Says the Gemara, Mishum Tikaganev Leila Dati. Because you are, quote unquote, stealing his knowledge, you're misleading him. Why? He thinks it's kosher, right? You're Jewish, you're selling him meat. So you're probably selling him kosher meat. You're a Jewish guy. He thinks it's kosher meat and it's not kosher meat. So who cares? He doesn't have to keep kosher. What's the issue?
He could in turn give it to or serve it to a Jewish person.
You're right, but that's not what it says. It doesn't say because he may give it to a Jewish person. And that may be a bit far-fetched anyway. Who says he's going to give it to a Jewish person? Maybe he's going to take it home and eat it. The point is you're misleading him. Why are you misleading him?
The implication is that it's kosher, so...
And therefore?
You haven't told him that it's not.
Why does he care?
You may want to come over for dinner. Or you may want
Why does he care? He's not Jewish. He can eat it either way.
Because he might value it more.
Because kosher means better quality, healthy. I mean, of course, you and I know, and I know that doesn't always mean that. It doesn't mean necessarily that it's made organically or whatever. A lot of people out there in the United States are buying kosher food and they're not Jewish at all. They want to see a kosher stamp. Why? Because kosher means, it's better quality, it's high. You can't sell non-kosher food to a non-Jewish person unless they are clear that it's non-kosher food. Otherwise, you're deceiving them. They think they're getting something and they're not getting it, which is interesting. First of all, you see very clearly that it makes no difference that you're Jewish and he's not Jewish, etc. When it comes to misleading people, there are certain mitzvot that apply between Jews and Jews. You're allowed to lend money and charge interest when it comes to a non-Jewish person. But you're not when it comes to a Jewish person. Why? What's the difference? Let me ask you a question. Is lending money and charging interest immoral?
No.
No, of course it's not. If I lend you my house, I'll charge you rent. If I lend you my car, I'll charge you rental. If I lend you my money, so why shouldn't I charge you money to use my money? That's perfectly moral. So you can certainly charge a person interest if they're not Jewish. But what if they're Jewish? So why can't you do it if they're Jewish? Let me ask you a question. My mother calls me up and she says to me, "Can you lend me $1,000? I really need it." And I say, "Mom, what a question. Mom, it's me you're asking. You're my mother. I'll lend you $1,000. Just pay me back 4% compound. No problem." What's the problem? Is it immoral? Is that immoral?
Yeah.
Why?
It's your family.
Family. Family. You don't lend money to family on interest. Jews are family. All Jews are family. You don't feel like they're family? Okay, so you've got to get to feel that way. At the end of the day, it's the way you treat your family is different. Of course, you have to be moral and upstanding and ethical with every single person you deal with. It doesn't matter whether they're Jewish or not Jewish. You can't mislead people. But family is family. Some things are different with family, which is an interesting question. Other examples. Let's see. Tanya, number 5. This one we saw before, in the middle of the top, first line, number 5. Hi, Rabbi Meir said, don't invite someone to eat with you for your day and you know he's not going to come. Okay, we saw that, because you're just pretending to be a nice guy. Don't offer people gifts for your day when you know that they're never going to receive them. Again, you're just doing it, it's a sham. You're just doing it to look generous, but it's not real. Look at the next case. Don't open up a barrel of wine which has been sold to a shopkeeper unless you tell him that that's the situation. What's going on here? Sometimes you've got to take the case of the Gemara and you've got to translate it into the modern day application. In the old days they used to have wine by the barrel, not by the bottle so much. So you start a new barrel of wine, that's a big deal. You open up a barrel of wine for somebody, like a barrel of wine's a lot of wine, it could go off, whatever. You come to my house and I say to you, "Josh, you came to my house for Shabbos, let's crack open a barrel of wine." And he's going, "Oh, hospitality, Manning's, this is something very special." And I know really what's the deal. I've done a deal with some other trader to sell him this wine. Later on, tomorrow morning, I'm selling this barrel anyway to them. I've got to open it one way or the other. I'm not opening it for Josh. But you know something? Why not make him feel good? Josh will crack open a very expensive bottle of wine. Or a case that happened to my rabbi. True case. My rabbi went somewhere for a meeting in London, and the guy offered him a whiskey. Okay? The guy offers him a whiskey, and he says, "You know something? I'll have a little one. I'm not such a big whiskey drinker." So the guy goes to the cupboard, opens up the cupboard, and he brings out one of these really expensive, Talisker or Blue Label, Johnny Walker, Talisker 40-year-old, something that you see in the whiskey shop for like $800, $900, whatever. And he starts pouring it out. My rabbi said to him, no, says, "You're wasting that on me. I'm not a big whiskey drinker." So the guy turns around to him, looks at him and says, You know, Rabbi, I've been meaning to ask a question about this for a few years now. What's the question? He goes, really, somebody bought me this bottle of whiskey about 3 or 4 years ago, and we finished it years ago. I just top it up with cheap whiskey from the supermarket, you know? And I pour it for people. It looks like it's Blue Label. I pour it for people. Everyone drinks it. They go, psst, this is a whiskey, you know? It's all fake. It's all cheap whiskey. It's not real. So the guy says, I've always had a bit of a halachic question about this. And the rabbi's thinking, my goodness, like, of course you've got a halachic question. You're deceiving people left, right, and center. That wasn't even the guy's question. The guy didn't even think of that. What was the guy's question? The guy's question is, if I reuse the bottle, do I have to take it to the mikveh to put it through the mikveh? If you buy new pots and pans, you have to... Like, the guy didn't even occur to the guy that he was actually doing geneivat, which is, you think you're getting whiskey X, and you're not. It's a completely different thing. The guy's a sham. Now, what's the problem? You think you feel good, I feel good, we all feel good. The answer is, we'll look at Rashi. Rashi, classic commentator, in the brackets at the end of the second line. I'm deceiving you. You think you owe me one. You think you owe me one. Now, when I go around to your house and you give me a drink, you're going to feel a sense of obligation. No, well, when you came to me, then I gave you the Blue Label. So now you owe me one. Let's give you another example. You invite me to your wedding, okay? Let's say you're making a wedding and it's in Philadelphia, okay? And I live in Montreal. Well, I live in New York. Say I live in New York, it's more reasonable, okay? And I turn up at you invite me, you didn't think I was going to schlep all the way there, we don't even know each other that well, and I come to your wedding. I turn up at the wedding, and you see me at the wedding, you go, whoa, Rabbi Manning, so nice of you to come to the wedding, schlep from New York. Now, I happen to have a meeting in Philly that morning. I'm there anyway, okay? So, of course I go to the wedding, it's 3 blocks away, but you don't know that. You think I schlep from New York. Geneivat das, no? I walk in, no. You're happy, I'm happy, but at the end of the day, when
You're
invite...
still taking your time to go to the wedding, regardless of the meeting.
But it's not what you think. When I invite you to my wedding, and you think to yourself, do I want to schlep from Philadelphia to New York to go to his wedding? And then you think to yourself, yeah, but look, you guys schlepped to my wedding.
Is it worse for the guy inviting, thinking you wouldn't come?
No, we're realistic. We're vague colleagues. We don't know each other that well. Why would I go drive 3 hours to go to your wedding? Like, you know, in traffic.
Because it's a mitzvah to go to the wedding, isn't it?
It is a mitzvah to go to the wedding, but I can't go to every wedding.
Yeah, you can.
Right.
I can't. You live in Sydney. I'm going to go to every wedding.
But isn't the brisa when you're complimenting an ugly bride? Isn't it similar to that one?
Excellent. It's very good. It's a brisa. It's a Gemara in Ksubas and Daf Yud Zayin. It says, when the guy comes to you at the wedding and says to you, don't you think my bride is the most beautiful bride in the world? Okay. Even if you honestly don't think that, and objectively she really isn't, yeah, you have a mitzvah to lie and say she's the most beautiful bride in the world. But there's a very big difference. In that case, and this is the key, you're not getting anything out of it. He doesn't owe you one. You're saying something to make the guy feel good, to make her feel good, because at the end of the day, he's not really asking you an objective question. He doesn't really want to know if she's the most the beautiful bride in the world.
What if he's your boss or he really thinks she is?
Right, fine. So at the end of the day, you're not getting anything out of it. Here, the guy comes out of it thinking that he owes you one. What if it's your boss?
What if he's your boss?
What if he's your boss? So then, it's an interesting question. Yeah. So you're going to say something to him, and he's now going to, because you said it. That's an interesting question, isn't it? Yeah. If he's your boss. I think you still have a mitzvah to say that she's a beautiful bride. You're going to have to deal with the situation afterwards and work it out. Oh, I didn't really mean it. I don't think you say that.
Next thing you know, the bride's going to ask you how the dress looks. I mean,
yeah.
Slippery slope there.
I tell you something. I had this exact situation. I was once asked, one of my colleagues had a shiva. He lost his mother. I wasn't very connected to this person. I worked in an institution and he was working there, and I hadn't worked there for very long. And the shiva was like a half an hour, 45 minutes, probably an hour drive away. And quite frankly, I really would not have gone. But I was going anyway to see my sister-in-law. She lives around the corner, so I popped around there. So I went to the shiva, and of course he was, oh, thank you for coming. It's very nice of you to come, and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't feel I wanted to make a big deal at the shiva, but the next week when I saw him, I said to him, look, I saw you at the shiva, I was very sorry you were sitting shiva, I was in town anyway, and it worked out really well that I could come to the shiva. And I don't think he felt any worse of it. Let's say I'm driving out of here, out of Chappelle's, and you need a ride to, I don't know, Tel Aviv. Not Tel Aviv, it's not a good example. Let's say you need a ride down to Central Station. Oh, the bus station. Yeah, good. That's a good example. You need a ride to the bus station. And I don't live in the bus station. I live, well, no one lives in the bus station. Well, some people live in the bus station. Okay, but I live in Harnoff. Okay, so, but it happens to be I'm going to the bus station. Anyway, you didn't know that.
Right.
So you say, oh, Rabbi Manny, I'm really, is there any way you can give me a ride to the bus station? And I turn around to you and go, has she? Okay, come on, jump in the car, I'll take you to the bus station. And you're going to me, oh, Rabbi Manny, you're an amazing guy. No. Why is it different? It's no different. I could tell you, you know something? This is amazing. I'm going there anyway. It worked out perfectly. Jump in. I'll take you there anyway. You don't think any worse of me for it. But if I give you the ride and you think I'm the biggest guy in town, so that's geneivat. You can't do that. You see, they're very concerned about the way that you make other people think of you. And now it morphs into the issue of sales and advertising, which is the similar idea, but on a commercial level. Let's go forward. Look in number 5 on the third line down. Tan Rabbanan. Lo yimkor adam lechaveru sandal shel mesa. You can't sell a sandal of a dead animal. Bichlal shel chay chutza, on the basis that it came from a live shechted animal. Now, 1 second, what's going on here? Right. In other words, you're selling sandals and you're making out that it's very high quality leather. And actually the leather came from some mangy old sick cow that fell over dead. And you're selling bad quality leather on the basis that it's good quality.
How would it be bad quality though? I mean, I don't know much about
the animal could be diseased. Whatever it is, you don't want to buy leather from an animal that dropped dead from a disease. You want to buy healthy stuff. Think of it in modern context. I'm selling you Nike sneakers, and they're fakes.
Oh, okay.
They're fakes. They're fake Nike sneakers. Now, what's the problem there? Now, there might be a problem between me and Nike that I'm ripping off their brand name. But let's say between you and me, Nike sneakers cost how much? $120. And I'm selling fake Nike sneakers for $75. But it says Nike on them. Real Nike sneakers, $75. So you're getting a good deal. Now, the sneakers I'm selling you are worth how much? $75. They really are worth $75. So I'm not stealing your money. You're getting what you paid for, sneakers for $75. But you think you're getting Nike, and you're not getting Nike. So it's geneivat das. Now, let me ask you a question. I'm selling you real Nike sneakers for $5.
Stolen.
So you say, whoa, $5, what an amazing deal. $5, best deal of the year. Am I really fooling you, or am I not fooling you?
You're deceiving, the person's deceiving themselves.
Oh, so at what point do I draw a line? At what point do I draw a line and say, you know something, if I say things about my product, about myself, and people are just gullible, people are just foolish, they're going to believe anything, at what point do I take responsibility for people who really should have known better? If I open a burger place, best burgers in the world, Manning's Burgers, and you come in there and you complain afterwards, hey, I ate your burgers and they're not the best burgers in the world. Like, get out of here. Like, you want your money back? You know, it says best burgers in the, it doesn't mean that. Yeah, but if it doesn't mean it, you're deceiving people. Get out of here. I'm not deceiving anybody. That's what you write on the burger place. No? Yeah, but if you did, you're obviously not, quite right in the head if you think that they really are the best burgers in the world. Where do you draw that line? The Gemara is going to ask that exact question in a minute. Okay? Let's look at number 6 now, because we're a bit short of time, and we'll see how it works. Maybe someone read the English, okay? Because I translated this in English. The Gemara is now asking the following question. Okay, so I'm a kosher butcher. I've got meat, but I happen to have some non-kosher meat as well. I don't know, maybe a cow turned out to be treif. We checked it out. As you probably know, when you kill an animal, you have to check it out that it's healthy. This animal turned out to be not healthy. So it's not kosher. But I want to sell it to non-Jewish people. So how do I advertise? How do I put up the sign? Very interesting question. Who's going to read the English, please? Just read the English for number 6. Volunteer? Yeah, Adam, please.
How does a kosher butcher announce that meat is being sold to non-Jews?
In other words, the Gemara wants to know what is the wording that I put on my announcement so that I'm not misleading people. Carry on.
So Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef said as follows: meat on sale here for non-Jews.
Oh, meat on sale for non-Jews. And it is meat on sale for non-Jews. Carry on.
But surely one should say non-kosher meat on sale here for non-Jews.
Oh, if I just say meat on sale, what will he think? It's a kosher butcher. He's selling meats. It must be kosher meat. I have to surely say on the sign, non-kosher meat available here for non-Jews. Carry on.
So if you say that, no one will buy it.
Right. Who's going to buy it when I put on the sign, non-kosher, special, no one wants to buy that. Carry on.
But if you don't say that, you're deceiving people. No, they are deceiving themselves.
Which is exactly what David said. In other words, the Gemara is asking, what's the line between, I've got to sell my products. I need to represent it in a favorable light. I can't just write down every single thing that's wrong with it. But there comes a point when people are deceiving themselves. I had a second-hand car. It was probably even a third-hand car many years ago. And I had a question. I was selling it on to someone else. I had a question. What do I need to tell people about what's wrong with the car? It's a second-hand car, third-hand car. The car's 10 years old. This squeaks and this creaks and this sticks and this, Do I need to make a list for the person that's coming to look at the car saying, you should know the following 15 things are wrong with the car? I wish you to know that before you buy it.
Legally, if it was a house, it would be latent defects.
Oh, so good. In a house, in a property situation, even though in practice they're kind of shifting this a bit, there is a principle of caveat emptor, which means that the buyer beware.
Right.
If you don't ask the question, then it's your problem. I don't have to tell you things unless they're latent defects, which no one would have really known about. But if it's something you should have really asked, there's a crack in the wall, okay? And you never ask, what's that crack? And you buy the property, what's your problem? If it cracks there, you could have asked the question, you never asked the question. So where do you draw the line with a car? Do I really have to tell them or don't have to tell them?
What's majorly wrong with the car? If it's just normal wear and tear in the car, you don't have to really tell
Right, so when am I deceiving people and when am I not deceiving? Because we don't say caveat emptor in halacha.
When it's visible or not visible. If it's something they can tell just by looking at it.
So let's have a look. In this case, guys, get the cases clear in your head. In the case of the non-kosher meats, so the Gemara concluded, you don't have to say that it's not kosher. If they think that it's kosher, their problem. They're deceiving themselves. Carry on over the page, Dave. Adam, you're not finished yet.
Okay, this is just the case of Mar Zutra,
It's just like the case of Mar Zutra. Mar Zutra is a rabbi. We'll see what he's all about.
who is coming from Sifra to Bei Machuza.
You don't need to worry about the towns. He was going from town A to town B. Scholar in residence, coming from New York to Philly.
Was Rabbi and Rav Safra were on the way to Sifra.
Right, so get the case. Mar Zutra is coming to town A, let's say Philly. And Rabbi and Rav Safra are going from Philly to New York, okay? And they don't know about the other ones. They don't know about the other people coming.
So they met up on the road, and Mar Zutra assumed that they had come to meet him and said to them, you rabbis would need not have gone to such trouble for me?
In other words, Mar Zutra sees these guys coming towards him on the road. He assumes they're the welcoming committee, and he starts going, oh, guys, so good of you. You shouldn't have done this. This is quite unnecessary, beyond what you needed to know. They've got a real dilemma.
So,
What are they going to say to the guy? They're going to tell him that they didn't know he was coming. Let me give you, before you carry on, Adam, let me give you a modern day scenario. You're having a few guys round for dinner, whatever. And at the end of dinner, you cooked a nice cake, you made a dessert thing, you're a bit fancy that way. You bring out this dessert thing. And one of the guys around the table starts screaming, hey, you remembered my birthday. I don't believe it. You're a really good friend. Thanks. You remembered my birthday. And you had no clue. You just brought out dessert. The guy screaming and shouting is such a good friend. What are you going to do? You're going to say, happy birthday.
But would it be worse to embarrass him?
Would it be worse to embarrassing? You're going to say, I didn't know you. It's a really difficult dilemma. The Gemara is asking this dilemma. What's he going to say to what are they going to say to the guy? Carry on.
Rav Safra answered, we actually did not know that you were coming.
No, Rav Safra is very straight. He says it how it is. He says, look, I'm really sorry. We didn't know you were coming. Okay, and of course then the guy felt like
saying, I don't know who you are.
Right, well, he knew who he was, but they had no idea that they would carry on.
Rabbi said to Rav Safra, why did you have to say that to him? You upset him.
You upset him. The guy got all excited. Now he feels like a fool. He assumed that carry on.
He replied, but otherwise we would be deceiving him. Rabbi answered, no, he was fooling himself.
Oh, again, the Gemara concludes that in this case, like the case of the kosher meat, if the guy assumes that you're coming to meet him and starts screaming and shouting, you don't have to tell him that you're not. Let him think. But you're deceiving him. He's deceiving himself. Now, where are you going to draw that line? Why is that different from opening the barrel of wine and giving it to someone at the table where we said, you're not allowed to do that because they think that you've opened the wine for them only if you tell them I've sold it to the shop or something, or you're not allowed to give a ride for someone who thinks you're going to the central bus station, but actually you're not. Yeah.
Because in the former, you're actually being proactive. You're the one actually initiating the action, saying,
Good.
Here, I'm going to offer you this bottle of wine. You come and give me a bottle of wine. But in the latter, he's actually, you happen to meet, and he's like, I said, oh, look, you saw me, oh, you can come in to see.
Oh, excellent,
Right.
excellent, good. So Adam's answer is pretty much the answer that Rashi gives. Rashi, who is one of the classic medieval commentators on the Gemara, picks up this Gemara, and they're trying to work out what is the difference between these cases. Some of them you have to tell them, some of them you don't have to tell them. So look at Rashi number 7, excuse me. So Rashi says like this: in the case of the meat, which it was okay, let them think it's kosher, they never asked if it was kosher or not. They just bought it and assumed it. Furthermore, when it says above that one is deceiving in the case of the leather shoes, and in the case of the opening the barrel of wine, it was where he said to him, I'm opening it for you. In such cases, he's clearly deceiving. Rashi's answer is very much like Adam's. It depends whether you're being proactive or not. If you represent to somebody, I'm doing this for you, and you're lying, then you're a deceiver. But if you keep stum, you say nothing. If you want to think that, you think that. That's not my problem. You think that if you want. In other words, when I open the bottle of wine at dinner, I said to the guy, says Rashi, let's crack open a new bottle of expensive wine in your honor. So that I can't do. And in the case of the leather shoes, he's telling him it's made of good quality. They're real Nike sneakers. But in the case of the meat, the guy just bought meat. I didn't say anything. He didn't ask me if it was kosher. I didn't say anything. He buys the meat. He thinks what he thinks. In the case of Mar Zutra, I didn't say we were coming to meet him. He suddenly decided we were coming to meet him.
He wasn't trying to deceive.
I wasn't trying to deceive him. He jumped to that conclusion. That's Rashi's understanding. Similarly, number 8, it says, in the case of Mar Zutra, Rashi says, since we did not say to him we'd come to meet him, then it's not deceiving. Now, Tosafot are the students and the grandstudents and the great-grandstudents of Rashi. Rashi lived in France in the 11th century. Tosafos were the rabbis living in the 100, 200 years after Rashi who were coming in his footsteps. And very often, on a standard page of Gemara, you generally have Rashi and Tosafos on each side of the Gemara, and they're classic sparring partners, if you like, in halacha. Very often, Tosafos picks up Rashi, quotes Rashi, and disagrees. And this is a case of that too. Tosafos disagrees and says, no, I'm sorry, I can't agree with that. Look at Tosafos in number 9. Tosafos says, it appears that in the case of opening the barrel, nothing explicit was said. In other words, how does Rashi know in the case of the bottle of wine, it's when I said, let's open a bottle of wine? Never said that. All it said in the Gemara is you're not allowed to open a bottle of wine when it's not ready for them. Didn't say that I said anything. Why do you think I did? And yet it's still prohibited, since it's not reasonable for a guest to assume that the wine had been sold to the local store. In the case of the meat, however, the non-Jewish buyer should have realized that the meat was not kosher. Also, Mar Zutra should have realized that they'd not come to meet him, but for their own reasons. Tosafos says, no, he's a bit stricter. He said the burden of proof is a bit tougher. It's not enough to say that I never said anything. Even if you never said anything, that could be very misleading. Tosafos says the test is not whether you said or whether you didn't say. The test is it reasonable for them to expect that you did this or you didn't do this? So, in the case of a butcher selling meat for non-Jews, come on, what's reasonable? They think it's kosher? If it's kosher, why have I put a sign on the door saying meat specially for non-Jews? Why is it kosher? If you think it's kosher, that's your problem. It was not reasonable to think that. Similarly, you walk up to someone in the street, you start screaming and shouting, I can't believe you came to meet me, some random person. Like, why would someone do that? That wasn't reasonable. In the case of the wine, if I open a bottle of wine for Josh, I say, let's open an expensive bottle of wine, Josh. It's reasonable for him to think I did it for him. Who else could I have done it for? He doesn't know I sold it to the shop.
So would he disagree on the birthday cake then?
So what's the case with the birthday cake? So it's a good question, what's the birthday cake? The birthday cake is a little bit like the Mar Zutra situation. Maybe it depends who it is. Let's say it's some random, you ask me if I come to your house for dinner, and you bring out a cake, and I start screaming and shouting, hey, you knew my birthday. Like, hey buddy, I don't even know who you are. Why would I know your birthday? So you can let me think that. Like why would I have thought that? It's not reasonable. Let's say it's your brother. Let's say it's your mother. Like, maybe that's deceiving her. Maybe you shouldn't embarrass her publicly.
More pointing your wife.
Your wife.
Well,
And let me tell you something, it's not at the end of the day, if you're deceiving people, you're deceiving people. There was a case that came up in Yerushalayim a few years ago. A guy bought his wife fake jewelry.
Oh.
It looked really expensive, really fancy, and it was fake. It was cheap stuff. He gave her the jewelry. She opened it up. She went, whoa. She goes, how much did you pay for this? And he answered her, sweetheart, you really don't want to know. Lying or not lying?
Not lying.
Why? Who cares?
Totally lying. Totally lying. It's not about.
She doesn't want to
He
know
only
it.
paid pennies for it.
But if she thought
I know.
She might as well know either way, because you think that
I
You don't
know.
want to know how much I
If she-
paid.
spent $10,000.
Yeah, but listen, guys.
If she enjoyed
When he says, "Darling, you don't really want to know," what does she reasonably think that means?
He spent a fortune.
It means he spent a fortune. He spent a fortune deceiving people. You know, if they reasonably think that. When I was selling my car, so what answer did I get? I was told, if you sell it to a little old lady down the road, you must list all the things that are wrong with the car. She doesn't know anything about cars. If you sell it to a dealership and you trade it in, that's their job. It's not your job to tell them what's wrong with your car. You give them the keys. You say, you check it out. You test it. You take it for a drive. You tell me how much you think it's worth. You're going to tell them their job? So he says, then you don't need to tell them anything because it's reasonable. They should know. What happened in the end? A true story. I don't tell you a word of lie. I sold it to a dealership. The car broke down on the way to take it into the dealership to trade it in. It broke down on the highway. I was like going nuts with this car, you know, saying to him and kicking the car and doing all these things, saying start. The car started again. I drove it into the dealership. I gave them the keys and say, look, guys, you take the car for a drive. You tell me what you think it's worth. It's your decision. And whatever, they did a part exchange. This is how the Shulchan Aruch, which is the code of Jewish law, he rules strictly like Tosfos. It's not good enough to just keep quiet and, I never said anything. It's what's reasonable for them to expect, which is the key. And therefore, if you look here in number 11, in the last source, you see the Rambam, who says very clearly, a person is not allowed to be smooth talking. You can't be loyally, weaselly words and think that works. It doesn't work. It's okay if you're a lawyer, you're drafting contracts. But when you're dealing with people, you have to work out what people really think you mean, not what you thought you meant. And I never lied because technically, etc. Don't have one thing in your heart and one thing in your mind. You have to be a straight person. And you have to be a straight up person. What you're thinking in your mind, that should be what's coming out of your mouth. You're not allowed to mislead people in all these examples that we've had. Yes, Josh?
So in the case of like birthday code, let's say it's your brother, where it's reasonable for him to assume you remembered his birthday.
Right.
You wouldn't want to say anything at that time because you'll embarrass him, but
So
you
you
have
say
to tell
afterwards.
him later.
Maybe you should,
Like in the case where you want to balance, you have to tell them honestly so they don't assume the wrong thing.
I think it's the way you say it. If you say it in the right way, then people don't get offended. If you say it in the wrong way,
But you're
people
also
do.
deceiving everyone else at the table, because then they think you're a good brother. because you
So you have to go and tell them each one.
But then it
Like,
could be embarrassment of the brother.
I don't know. You certainly can't embarrass people publicly.
Well, let's say, going back to the cake example, how about what you reasonably expect? Like, let's bring out the cake. Does the cake say, happy birthday? or
Okay,
whatever,
good
but candles
question.
coming out on top of the
Good question. It's like dessert. You expect desserts for your birthday? Let me, I've only got 2 minutes, but let me finish with a true story. I heard this story from a Rav called Rav Israel Tauber. He is a Rav, he deals in property and other business things in America. So he said the following. There was a guy, he heard this story, there was a guy in America, and he was a business guy, and he used to go to these lunch and learn kind of things. A rabbi comes into town, sits and they learn. Professional people do. I've done a few of these things. I used to go to them when I was a lawyer. I've given them since I've been a teacher. So the rabbi spoke about this, and one of the guys who's a property dealer comes up to the rabbi afterwards and says, "Rabbi," he says, "you've really caused me a big problem with this class." He goes, "Why?" He goes, "Look, this is it. I'm a property dealer. I bought a property years ago for a lot of money, and it's got a crack in the property, and it floods, and it's a real dud. I can't tell you how much of a disaster it is. And I've tried to sell it loads of times, but of course, caveat emptor, but everyone always asks the question, what's this crack? And I have to tell them, and they always pull out of the deal, and I can't get rid of this building." Finally, he said, somebody has already exchanged contracts. They signed the contract to buy the building, and they never asked anything about the crack. Are you telling me that I have to tell them about the crack, and that there's a crack and that it leaks, and that there's a leak? If I do that, they'll pull out of the deal. So the rabbi said to him, "Look, in halacha, we don't say caveat emptor. You have to tell the guy. You have to find the right time and the right place to tell the guy. You have to tell the guy."
So after you bought
Come
it.
after.
So no, you can't tell them afterwards. So what did he do? So this is the story. So they come to the completion meeting, the closing meeting, you know, and they're all sitting there with big mahogany tables and signing bits of paper, passing it all around, and all this kind of deal. So just before they're about to close the deal, and they've already signed contracts, but they're about to finish it all off. So the seller, the lawyer for the seller, stands up and says, before we close the deal, my client would like to give this memorandum to the buyer. So the buyer takes the memorandum and opens it up and reads it, and it says, I would like to inform you that the property you're about to buy has a crack in the wall, which floods on a regular basis, and I want you to know about this before you buy the property. So, of course, the buyer is very surprised. Why on earth did he tell me? What is this? He didn't need to tell. So he comes up to me and says, what is this? Why did you tell me about this? So he says, look, he goes like this. Look, I'm an Orthodox Jew. I try to keep a system of Jewish law called halacha, and the halacha tells me that I have to inform you if there's something wrong with the building, even though caveat emptor, I have to go beyond that, and I don't want to break the halacha, and I want you to know about this before you buy it. So the guy goes over to his lawyer, talks to his lawyer, comes back 5 minutes later, he says to him, look, if you knew about this halacha thing, why didn't you tell me before I signed the contract? So he said to him, look, I went to a class and the rabbi told me about this, and I didn't actually know this law beforehand, but now I do know it, and now I want you to know. So the guy goes away for another 5 minutes, and he comes back, and he puts it down on the table, and he goes, you Jews, you think I can't see what's going on here, right? He goes, I know why you're telling me this. You found somebody that's given you a higher offer for the building, and you're trying to get me to pull out of the deal because you want to sell it to someone else for money. He says, I'm not falling for this for 1 minute. And he signs the deal, and the deal goes ahead, and he buys the property.
I love that.
That's awesome.
So I can't guarantee that it's always going to have a happy ending, but one just needs to be aware of this. That the halachic system and the Gemara and the rabbis are asking questions, trying to get to the fine lines between what is and isn't ethical behavior. At what point are you misleading people? At what point are you just advertising? It's genuine. You have to be able to sell your products. You can't cater for every person out there with no sense. If they think they're getting Nike sneakers for $2, that's probably their problem, not your problem. Even though you're not allowed to sell fake sneakers for sure, but as vis-a-vis him, it's not necessarily deceiving him. The Gemara wants to know this fine line. It's important halachically. It's not just about keeping kosher, keeping Shabbos. That's also very important, but this is as equally, if not more important. Yeah.
I have a question. As a Jewish lawyer, and let's say I represent a client, let's say I represent versus like a Jewish client versus a non-Jewish client. Am I putting aside? I know representing clients jealously, in the ethical guidelines of every local jurisdiction. But let's say I have let's say I have a Jewish client, and it's in the same fact pattern that you just presented to me with the crack.
Right.
On the halacha, would I have to advise my client to?
So that's a longer question, which I haven't got time to get into now. You, as a lawyer, are not allowed to, in halacha, cause your clients to do things which are a breach of halacha if they're Jewish clients. Now, that the case may depend on what they know, what they don't know, what the case is. It comes up more often in a situation of interest. If, like we talked about interest before, if you have a Jewish client who is lending money to another Jewish person, and your client wants to charge interest, are you as the lawyer allowed to draw up the documentation enabling those clients, or that client, to enter into something which halachically is prohibited? Is that the same as basically giving them non-kosher food to eat, effectively? Or do you turn around and say, look, they know what they're doing, they're big boys now, I'm at arm's length, and I'm just doing something which I'm being asked to do? Does it depend on how the contract is worded? Yes, it certainly does. Not all interest is interest, some of it is a penalty. I'm not getting into all of that now. But it may be that as a lawyer, as a professional, and as a Jewish religious professional, one does get into issues sometimes as an advisor, issues of confidentiality, when your clients are telling you things that maybe you have a duty to tell other people. These issues come up in law as well, obviously in ethics and various things, but halacha also has something to say about them, a lot to say about them, and depending on the case. That's why, as a professional, I'll end up with just a story. The Chofetz Chaim once Chofetz Chaim was a very famous rabbi, lived in Russia about 100 years ago. There was a member of his community who was the shoichet. He used to kill the animals. And one day he said to the Chofetz Chaim, look, I'm giving this up. I can't do this anymore. I can't take the stress. He goes, why? What's wrong? You're a sheikhet. He goes, yeah, but like the responsibility. If I shecht it wrong, if I do it wrong, all these people are going to be eating non-kosher meat because of me. All the potential things that could go wrong. I can't do this anymore. It's too stressful. He goes, oh, I understand that. That's very, very God-fearing of you. I understand that. What are you going to do instead? He goes, oh, I think I'm going to go into business. He goes, business? You're going into business? Do you realize how many things are involved halachically in being in business and the number of potential issues that come up between people? Better off stick to being a sheikhet. There's less that can go wrong than being in business, and therefore, I'm not saying you shouldn't be in business. You should certainly be in business, but one has to be aware that halacha doesn't just relate to areas of ritual, it relates to areas of life. Since business is part of life, it's very much part of the halachic system too. Okay, we'll finish there, and thank you very much.